All right, so the next mode or modes in the warp feature of Serum, they are the bend plus, bend minus, and bend plus minus. Now, if you're a massive user, these will probably be very familiar. They're in massive, and they sound very similar. But let's check them out and then do the same thing like we did in the last video. We're going to test them out on some sounds and see what the best way to use these are when you're manipulating your wavetables. All right, so bend plus, what's that going to do? Well, bend plus is going to pinch everything in towards the middle section of the wavetable. So it's really easy to see on a saw wave. So if I play this, right, it's taking this outside information and pinching it in. Now let's go to some of the other basic shapes here. We'll do it with a sine wave. It's pulling and pinching everything towards this middle line. Think of a middle line right down the middle. I don't know how much more redundant I could have got. Middle line down the middle. Not my finest. All right, so let's go to another shape here. Same thing with this the saw waveform. This saw waveform is an analog version of a saw waveform. It's not as digital as one that's the default on the initialized preset. And you can see it's kind of like twisting it, and it's going to have a different timbre to it. It's not going to be as bright. Let's go to a triangle. Right, again, pinching everything towards the middle, and here's a square. Curiously enough, it does nothing on a square. Let's try it on one of the pulses. Okay, pulse, it's almost like when you have a bend plus on the pulse. So here's the pulse. Let's turn this down. So here's basic square, here's the pulse. It almost just makes it into a normal square. Right, it's reducing the pulse, and same with this. All right, and let's check it out on the triangle saw. Okay, so it doesn't sound like it's doing a whole heck of a lot, right? It's definitely not as noticeable as the sync warp mode, and that's kind of a good thing. I use bend plus or bend minus or bend plus minus, which we'll talk about in a second. I use it on a lot of patches, or a good amount of patches, where I'm just trying to create some movement so it sticks out in the mix or has its own space in the mix a little bit more. So let's go back to, we'll initialize the preset real quick. So let's look at bend minus as we do this. Now bend minus is going to bulge everything away from the middle. Now this one I think does cooler stuff, but before we do that, I did want to check out the bend plus on span. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop an LFO onto the bend, choose ramp, select a bar, do an envelope. So let's see what's actually happening to the frequency as we do this. So the energy of the lower harmonics are going away. So let's do the inverse and do the bend minus, and let's check out what happens on span. Okay, so I totes gave it away. I said inverse, if you know what that means. If you've taken high school algebra, boom, you knew that it was going to be the opposite. So this has more bass frequencies come into play. Now let's check out the third one, which is bend plus and minus. So this is a combination of the two. So if you go to the middle, which would be 0 on this, right? So this is 0%. That's going to be like it's not even on. Right? Now, if we change this down to the right, the left, it's like plus, and over here it's like minus. So you can actually get both of them. So kind of pinch, close, and open your sound, which has a really cool effect. And I use this on a lot of feature-based chord sounds. I use this on anything that I want to kind of move around, like pads, atmospheres. Right, it's just slowly expanding outwards. So on pads, this is one of the coolest features of the warp modes, I think, for creating pads. Let's check out the bend modes now on some presets. All right, so as luck would have it, the first pad that I'm pulling up has modulation with both wavetable position and bend plus and minus. So the reason why this just works with pads is usually on a pad, you open up the filter or do something with the filter with an envelope or an LFO to make it have that, chill kind of anticipatory type sound, right? So if we play this, okay, so that's what's going on there. Now, you can see what's happening on oscillator A as we go with the bend plus and minus. And we also have wavetail position. Let's bypass that real quick just so you can see and hear the difference. Now that same LFO is actually modulating our filter open. So let's keep the filter pretty much open and play it and see if we hear this bend plus minus effect. Right, you still hear it. And that's coming from the bend plus minus. Let's bypass that. Right, it's subtle, but it's really not as cool. So these warp modes can really bring things to life. All right, so let's check out some more presets. Let's go to a lead now, and let's check out this type of sound. See what bend plus. I see bend plus is on it. Okay, so we have an analog wave here. It's called PWM Maths, and it's a quite interesting pulse width wave. Has a very vocal-ish sound to it. Make sure the filter doesn't have a format filter on. All right. The bend plus actually makes it sound even more vocal-like, right? Because it's pinching out some of those lower frequencies. Let's try bend minus on this. All right, and then bend plus minus. Okay, that's a good segue. I want to go to a bass real quick. Let's go to this flume bass here. Now, bend plus, minus, or any variation of them actually has a really cool effect on basses. So let's get an LFO happening on both of these. So we'll do about a bar, we'll do envelope. Okay, and we'll do it on this as well. So we have bend minus on one. Let's do bend plus on the other. So here's what's happening on oscillator A. So as it plays, it's actually on oscillator A, it's going to technically lose a little bit of the lower frequencies, just a little. On oscillator B, it's going to gain it. Let's change that to bend plus and minus. And I'm going to hold down Option and Shift so it goes in a two-directional way. Right, so with a bass like this, you typically wouldn't have too much movement because then it would kind of border on like a wobble or a gated sound. But this is a way to get some movement into the sound that isn't the filter. Right? Because we have it on bend plus and minus and bend plus, we are actually moving through the frequency spectrum. Like if we go through span here, we go to span and check this out. Right? So a little bit higher frequencies are for sure happening as we go, but it's really cool because with a bass, you can't, this would really change the sound. And kind of make your mix all wonky because now that turns into almost a lead, right? Well, if you're trying to get some movement into your basses, the bend plus, the bend minus, the bend plus minus, they're great ways to get movement that is subtle, but yet still cool. So for hip hop, OVO, R&B basses, this is really cool. This one was kind of like a flume bass, which has an OVO hip hop element to it. So there's a lot you can do with this. It works with both analog and digital waveforms. All right, so I've loaded up a pluck preset, so you can see and hear how the bend plus minus, the bend modes work on plucks as well. Now, there's a lot of modulation happening on this patch. If we go to the matrix, you'll see that it's modulation for days. But a lot of it's happening on the oscillator level, wavetail position. An envelope is modulating through the wavetail position, and then there's a LFO modulating through the wavetable position of oscillator B. So let's check this out on the single cycle waveform view, because we have envelope 2 modulating bend of oscillator A, and we have LFO2 modulating the bend, which is plus minus, of oscillator B. So let me play something real quick. All right, so let me take that off, and you'll hear the difference, and I'll try to play the similar thing there. So let's jump to there. We'll bypass. Right, so it's, again, a really subtle thing, but it is enough to, I think, make it sound more unique. That's for sure. I think it adds some element of movement to the sound that's not affecting the filter, which is always nice. Now, speaking of that, it's not going to mess up with your phase and your mono compatibility. That's the nice thing about these blend modes, is it's just moving the, I guess, perceived frequency kind of timbre of the waveform or wave table. All right, guys, that sums up this look at the bend modes. In the next video, we're going to be diving into the pulse width modulation.